Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. So ever since I started shooting large format about 5 years ago, I've always developed my own film at home, mostly due to convenience and also cost savings. And it's been just a process going through a number of different setups to really dial in a workflow and tools that are easy to use and just gives me consistent results. So I've wanted to do this video for a while now just to share kind of my process and the tools that I use with you, hopefully to help if you've been thinking of doing this at home. And I'm actually going to start at the beginning with, the initial setup that I used all the way to where I'm at now, just to give you, some different options at different price points. But beyond just the tools in this video, we're also going to go and develop a couple of test sheets of black and white film that I shot specifically for this, so I can run you through the process that I use and show you these tools in action. Okay, so we're going to kick things off by looking at the tools, and we're going to begin with developing, and specifically the setup I used to develop my very first few sheets of film. So when I first started developing at home with 35 and 120, I just used a very simple setup with a Patterson tank, doing stand developing with manual agitations. But naturally, as I started to shoot 4x5 and needed to develop, I figured I would just use the same method. So what I did is I went and bought this insert right here. And I think this is by a company called E-Tone, but I've seen a very similar looking one sold by a bunch of different companies. And what this does is it basically holds 2 sheets of film. So you put one in either side like that. You slide that into the Patterson tank, and then it just sits on the desk, and you use manual agitations. And I only use this for a short period of time, and I actually wouldn't recommend this specific model for a couple of reasons. First off, this is the only method of developing 4x5 where I ever ran into any issues with developing marks on the film. It happened quite frequently, actually, where I had like bands across the sky and some other strange marks. And there were a few times where I'd actually open the tank up after development was done, and the film itself would actually be stuck to the sidewall of the tank. So I could just never fully trust this. Maybe other people have had better experience. But beyond that, the second thing, and this is a big one, is that since this sits in the Patterson tank and it's basically just stand development, you need to make sure that you have enough chemical solution in the tank to cover the entire film. And I think with the Patterson tank I was using, that worked out to somewhere around 800 milliliters of solution. So it became very pricey just to develop 2 sheets of film. With that being said, though, there are lots of other companies that make inserts for Patterson tanks. There's a company called Mod 54 that make one. I've heard really good things about it, and it actually holds 6 sheets of film. So I certainly wouldn't write off this method, and it's, for sure, I would say the simplest and most cost-effective way to get into things if you want to develop 4x5 at home. But with this particular model right here, I never had much luck. And after this, I moved on to Rotary development, which I absolutely love, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So a couple of years ago, I ended up getting my hands on a Jobo CPE2, and I made a video about that on the channel. And if you're not familiar, Jobo CPE is a rotary processor, and it's essentially this big temperature-controlled water bath tub, which has a heating element in it, thermostat controlled by a dial, and then it has a tank that attaches horizontally, which runs back and forth through the bath on a motor. And these are really nice for a couple of reasons. First off, you have that temperature controlled water bath, so it heats up your chemicals. You just put them in there in the containers, and then the tank is run through that bath as well. So it's amazing for holding just a consistent temperature for developing, especially helpful for color. Also, it's very consistent because you have that constant motion that's always the same when you're developing, so that's nice as well. But the third thing, and this is the big one, is that rotary processor uses less chemicals just because the tank is always moving and the chemicals inside are being mixed about the entire time. So they use quite a bit less than if you were just doing stand development. But when I got my CPE, I had to go and source out a new tank to be able to use it on that processor. And it led me to this one right here. It's what I'm still using today with the new processor I have, and I absolutely love this. So this is the Jobo 2520 tank, and then I'm using it here with their 4509N insert. And I would highly recommend this setup. You can even use it if you're not doing rotary processing, just for stand development. And I've found it's very easy to load the film, and then this insert holds 6 sheets as well. And I've done hundreds of sheets of film through this, and I've never had one single issue at all when it comes to development. But the really nice thing when you use this combination with a rotary processor, you'll see here on the side, Jobo lists chemical volume needed for each type of film. And for 6 sheets of 4x5, it says you only need 270 milliliters of solution. I always shoot higher than that just to err on the side of caution. I'll go like 4 to 450. But compared to what I was doing before, 800 for 2 sheets, this is way more efficient and also way quicker because you're developing 6 sheets at once. All right, and that brings us to the current setup I'm using and this new processor. And I've had this for, I think, close to 8 months now. Put a ton of film through this thing and I've absolutely fallen in love with it. So this is called the CP Lift by a company called THD Darkroom. And this was sent to me by Reflex Lab, who I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. They sell this on their website. They wanted to see if I'd be interested in trying it out. And full transparency, I do get to keep this, but I'm very happy to talk about it just because it's worked amazing. I've done hundreds of sheets of film with this thing and also 35 and 120. But this is obviously an all-in-one processor, just like a Jobo CPE, but it has some things that I've, enjoyed quite a bit, some things that my CPE2 didn't have. First off, it's much more compact than the CPE2, so it's shorter, so it takes up less space. That's been really nice. It also has this digital readout here, so you can set your temperature control using this, very precise. And then it has a built-in pump as well, which feeds water up into this top compartment where the tank sits. So I've found that helps with consistency in terms of temperature of the water bath. But then the big thing, and this is not a necessity to have, but it's been a very nice luxury, is the lift system right here. And this type of lift system, this isn't a new unique idea. Jobo has made an actual lift accessory for years, but I didn't have one with the CPE2 I was using. And without it, basically what you have to do is you have to remove the tank in between chemical changes, pour out the old ones, pour in the new, reattach a tank. Not a big deal and not difficult to do by any means. But this right here, even though it's not a necessity, it's a very nice luxury to have, I would say. And what you do is the tank stays attached the entire time. You just stop the rotation when you're ready to pour your chemicals, lift this up, pours them out into a bottle below, and then you pour the new ones here in this funnel. And it just, streamlines the process, makes it very, very enjoyable. But with all that being said, buying one of these all-in-one processors, it's definitely an investment. They aren't cheap. So I think it really is just going to come down to how much film you do at home. This particular model, the CP Lift, I think right now goes for $999 US on Reflex Lab's website. So definitely not cheap. Something like a CP3 with a lift, if you were to buy it new, is even more than that. I think I saw one for like £1,700 here in the UK. You can find CPs used. They're all over the place in terms of pricing. I got mine for free, which was a very lucky score off of Facebook Marketplace, but I've seen them for £200 or $500 or $700. So there are options out there. Next up, we're going to look at what I use for scanning my 4x5 film. But before we do that, just have to quickly talk about the sponsor today, which is Squarespace. So as a photographer, one of the most important things for me is having a website. And over the years, I've tried all sorts of different methods, but for the past few years, I've been using Squarespace and have absolutely loved the professional results I get and also how easy it is to use. So if you're starting from scratch and have no experience, they have a number of very nice templates to choose from, or something like their Blueprint Builder, which allows you to build a professional looking website in just minutes. But I also love all of the different features and the flexibility it gives me. I can add things like an online store to sell books and prints. I can easily update or add new galleries. And it also has things like easy drag and drop page customization and the ability to add in videos, which is what I did for one of my pages to share my short films. So check out squarespace.com today, sign up for a free trial, test it out. When you're ready to launch, you can use my link below to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Okay, and that brings us next to scanning, and specifically how I started, and that was with a flatbed scanner. And I've never been a huge fan of flatbeds for 35, not bad for 120, but with sheet film, it always performed great, the one that I had, just because the negative's quite large, and I found you could get really highly detailed scans, even with an older scanner. The one that I was using was an Epson 4990. It's got to be like 20 years old, but it could do sheet film, and I was always pretty happy with how it performed. The only downside for me was the speed of it. So a few years back, I switched over to digitizing film with a digital camera, or camera scanning as people call it. And at first it was very simple. It led me to this, which is basically using this light pad that I already own. This is a Kaiser Slim Light Plano. And then this tool right here, which is called a pixelator. And this is very simply just a piece of frosted acrylic, has these little rubber feet on it, and then a frame here which holds down the sheet of 4x5. It does have inserts if you want to do 35 and 120. And technically this worked fine, but I found the whole setup a little bit fiddly. For instance, when you need to level it out, trying to get it parallel with your camera, I'd have to just shim the light pad. Even though it worked, I knew that I really wanted to find something like a little bit more permanent with some more features as well. So I ended up going down this rabbit hole trying to see what options are out there for sheet film holders for camera scanning. And I put a story out on Instagram asking for recommendations, and I was actually put in touch with this company here. It's called Cute New Design out of China. They make a few different film scanning accessories. And they sent me this right here, which is their 4x5 sheet film holder. And I've been using this for about a year now. And again, full transparency, I do get to keep this. There was no obligation to make a video or anything like that, but I've been so impressed by this and enjoyed it so much that I'm more than happy to share it in this video. So this thing, I would say, checked all the boxes and then some. First off, the build quality is amazing. The whole thing's made out of like a solid piece of aluminum. It has these adjustable feet on the bottom, and then it has this hinged lid here which has A&R glass on the bottom, and I believe A&R glass on the top, and it actually comes with a second lid which you can swap out that has no glass in it, and that has a built-in light source which slides in on the bottom, high CRI light source, and then it comes with this magnetized hood here which snaps on. Pricing on this right now, they actually don't have an online store set up yet. You can message them through Instagram apparently if you want to order one. But when I asked them earlier in the year, I think it worked out somewhere around $400 USD, and that included shipping. So not cheap, but compared to some of the other options out there on the market and for what you get and how well this is built, I actually think the price isn't that bad at all. So very, very happy with this. And then when it comes to the other accessories for camera scanning, I'm using my Lumix S5 IIX in high res mode, Sigma 70mm macro art lens, and then I'm using a Kaiser RS1 stand. Okay, so we're going to jump into the process now, starting with loading our film. Obviously I have to do this in a dark bag, but I'm going to show you here in the open just with some already developed film, just so you can see how this works. So what I like to do is I take this holder, flip it on its side, and on this side here I'm going to have these 3 notches, same on the other side. And I just put my finger and thumb over this first outside set, take my film and make sure that the notch code is on my left when it's facing me. That way I know the emulsion's on the inside. And then I just slide this in kind of under my thumb and my finger to help guide it into that first notch, and just push it until it stops. And then I'm gonna go to the other side since we'll be doing 2. Same thing, identical process on this. Notch code on my left, so emulsion's in. And then once I have my sheets of film in, this holder comes with these little plastic flaps, and what you do is you just take one of those, snap it in on either side, and what this does is it helps kind of fill the void in between the 2 sheets, and then it helps with chemical dispersion. So obviously, I'm doing this out in the open, so it is quite easy, but even still, in a dark bag, I found this entire process really, really easy to load. So the next thing that I would do is mix and heat up the chemicals. So for black and white, which is most of the 4x5 work I do, I'm using Ilford DDX, Ilfo Stop, and Ilford Rapid Fixer, and then a final wash of deionized water. And since we're just doing 2 sheets of film, I'm gonna mix up 350 milliliters of chemicals in graduates, and then I'm gonna pour those into containers, and into the bath they go. And once everything's to temp, what I like to do is put the tank onto the machine with no chemicals in it, and turn the motor on and let the tank run through the water for about 5 minutes, which is going to help heat it up so that you aren't pouring your chemicals into a cold tank, which would cause a temperature drop right away. When it comes to developing time, I'm just using the recommended times from Ilford for the developer and film combination that I have. But it is important to note when you're doing black and white film with a rotary processor, you do have to shorten the develop time just because the film is constantly being agitated. So what I've always done is just subtracted 15% off the develop time. It's always worked really good for me, but of course, it's important to maybe experiment and do your own tests with this. So as I start the developing process, I'm going to switch the CP lift over to its fastest speed, which is 75 RPM. And then I'm going to pour in the developer and wait out the time. And then what I like to do is when the developing time has 10 seconds left, that's when I start the next process. So I'm going to turn the rotation off as I use the lift, and I'm going to empty the developer back into its bottle underneath. And then I'm going to turn the rotation back on and pour in the stop bath into the funnel. And then I'm going to do that same process with the fixer. And for stop bath, I'm doing around 45 seconds. And the fixer, I usually end up anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes, probably closer to 5. And then after the fixer's out, I'll do 3 to 5 washes with 20-degree tap water at around 30 seconds each. And this is just using the slower speed rotation. And then I'll do one final wash using some deionized or distilled water. And then after that, I'll take the film from the tank, and I just have this like cheap drying film hanger rack that I got off Amazon that hangs over my shower, and I'll clip the film on that, run the shower for a couple of minutes on hot to, fill the bathroom with some steam. And doing this deionized or distilled water final rinse and the steam in the bathroom, I rarely have issues with dust when the film's dried. All right, now that we have the film developed, it is time to digitize it, and this is a super straightforward process, but I'm going to share it with you anyways. So when you are camera scanning, if you're new to it, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that the lens and the camera are parallel, and you do this by placing a mirror on top of your film holder and use the leveling feed on the holder until you get the center point on your camera screen directly lined up in the middle of the lens. Then you know that everything's aligned properly. And then with the Lumix, most of the time I'm using the high-res pixel shift mode, so turn the camera on, switch the dial over to the high-res mode, and then I often zoom into 100% with focus peaking turned on, and then just focus until it's strongest at one point in the center of the image. From there, I'll set my lens to f8, 2/3 of the stop of exposure compensation, and then I take the image. And the really nice thing with the Lumix is the pixel shift high-res file is combined in camera, so you don't have to go and merge it afterwards. And then from there, for black and white, I'll just bring the file into Lightroom, and I use Negative Lab Pro to do the conversion, often just using their stock settings, few tweaks, and maybe some light edits afterwards. With the Lumix and the high-res mode, the final result is just these really large, highly detailed images that I'm very happy with, and it's a much quicker setup than using a flatbed. All right, so that wraps up a look at the tools and the process that I use for doing my 4x5 film at home. And like I said at the start, there's so many different ways you can go with this. I think it really just comes down to the volume that you're doing, obviously your personal preferences, how much you want to spend, things like that. You can certainly get by for really cheap with a simple setup. If you want to just start experimenting, that's never a bad option. But for me, especially as I've moved to 4x5 as kind of one of my main capture tools, it's been really important and nice to have this, like I said, permanent kind of streamlined setup. My processor's in the bathroom, always ready to go. This scanning setup's here, ready to go. So when I go and shoot, I can come back, develop and scan really quickly and get on to just working with the images. So yeah, very happy with all these tools. Happy to recommend them. I'll put some links below if you're interested. And that's going to wrap this one up. So hope this helps. Other than that, just want to say thank you as always for watching, and I will see you very soon.